Just to be clear, when I talk about roadblocks in Raid, this wasn't what I meant. Hello, everyone. Bront, CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and I am not alone. I have my friend over here, Roadblock. How are you doing, my friend? This has been a long time coming because we've been talking about this since November-ish, I think.
Oh yeah, well I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Like you said, been a long time moving and all that. But I am so excited. And after the spice that we had over on the other channel, I'm very excited to see what we got to talk about over here. I know we're gonna disagree.
Oh,
I
yeah.
already know.
So yeah, if you have not had a chance to check it out on his channel, we are talking about the underrated. No, we were talking about overrated champions on your channel. We're going to be talking
Yep.
about underrated here. We'll get the topics right at some point in time. You know, we're trying to create content here, and because there's so many champions in the game, and to be fair, sometimes we have our personal favorites. Sometimes there's public personal favorites, and obviously there's a level of hype about a lot of these champions. And so we're just talking about champions that we think do not get the recognition they deserve. And that doesn't mean they aren't good or considered good, but it's oftentimes cases where people are not using them in places where they actually are very good, or just they got a bad rap for some reason. I know I've got a couple of fusion champions, for example, that just got a bad rap that I think are very underrated. For example, I have no idea what kind of fun stuff you've got. But yeah, we are here. We've got about five. At least I've got five. I think you've got five too, right?
Yep. Yep.
Awesome. So I will give you the mic and let me know what is your first underrated, and what do you mean by how they're underrated?
All right. So my first one is going to be Armiger. Classic champion that I think that when I started playing Raid, you'd see every content creator for the most part was making an Armiger video once or twice a year. Just trying to remind everybody how great Armiger is. And he has really fallen off as far as getting the love that he used to get over on YouTube. Um, and I do we talked about this before, a lot of account takeovers, and I'm sure that you see people trying to do Fire Knight and they don't have turn meter control. Even Dark Fae as well. I mean, if you don't have Allure or Newt or some of these, really high end turn meter control, don't be afraid to run an Armiger. I mean, he will fill that role for you very well, very easily. Just got to get him crit capped, and then he even brings not terrible damage in the form of enemy max HP on the A2. So he's a champion that I think used to get a lot of love and just isn't as popular of a video subject these days, if you will.
Yeah, I think some of it is just the general power creep in the game. You've got champions like Newt, for example, that basically are a legendary version of Armiger in many ways, shapes, or form. You've got so many other champions that do some of the stuff he does, either better or just differently. And, I mean, I love Armiger. I've got built on both my accounts. And in fact, I think I just recently finally pulled the gear off of him because he was the only champion I had in Destroy, because he was great in Destroy for the Scarab. And, good champion. He's definitely not one you're going to be using in the end game at this point in time, but he is great for progression, especially if you need the things that he brings. Very particularly, this A1 decreased turn meter is very, very underrated. Allure is basically the next best option as far as this type of turn meter control on an A1. So yeah, he's I think he's just kind of underrated nowadays because people don't think about a uncommon really as doing much of anything. And there's a
Hmm.
couple of uncommons that are useful, but he's still, I think, the one that's always stood the test of time and still a pretty decent champion.
Hmm. Absolutely.
All right. So I am going to go with my first fusion champion here, and I think she's starting to get more love now, but she got a lot of mez back when the fusion happened for Morgaine. And maybe some of it was fallout from this being, if I recall, was a somewhat difficult fusion for some people because I think it was a classic fusion back when they were kind of ramping the difficulty up just a little bit. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, she's Lysandra, but not quite as good," or "She's this champion, but not quite as good." But the people that were complaining about that often were the people that, well, I have a Lysandra and I have this champion and I have this champion. They had so many turn meter champions. And then we had content like Centranos that came out where having as many champions that do similar things as possible gives your account a lot of flexibility. Plus, her passive is god tier against the boss. So this heal reduction is very underrated. It is very useful. This is actually really good against the Fire Knight because the Fire Knight can heal himself. It is also really, really good against Amius because Amius heal reduction is really kind of the thing you want from her. But, she's got a 19% speed aura. Can't complain about that. All battles. You've got turn meter increase. You've got turn meter decrease. And that's a 4-turn cooldown. It's actually as good as Lysandra's for the most part. So it's kind of hard to complain about that. You've got this skill here, which can throw some True Fear and stealing some buffs. That's actually a very underrated skill for her. And then she's got decreased speed on the A1 as well, making her very useful in all kinds of content because decreased speed is amazing. And I think she still just doesn't get the credit she deserves as, honestly, a top tier speed champion. I actually have one built high speed in Stone Skin I use for Undead Centranos, or not Centranos, Siege. I put her in my defense on Siege and have her as the lead. And I've actually won like 5 or 6 defenses with that in a single Siege battle.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially with Siege. I mean,
Mhm.
having that all battles aura and Siege, she's given um what is Arbiter 30% turn meter fill?
Yeah, Arbiter's a turn 30%, so she's a
Okay.
only 20%, but she also decreases the enemies by 20%, which is
Yeah,
very underrated.
and increases the speed as well. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I want she's on my list of champions that I want. I think that um I agree wholeheartedly that she's underrated because I think uh I don't know why. I couldn't tell you why people didn't really think that her kit was going to be that great, but I mean it reads well on paper.
Mhm.
I think maybe because there's no increased attack, but you have a lot of self buffers these days too that can really capitalize on this. So, yeah, I think that's a great call out. I think yeah, definitely an underrated champion for sure.
All right, let's go for your second one then.
So my next one is actually going to be Gwendolyn.
Ooh.
I have seen her get a lot of love lately with the new boss, the Chimera.
Mhm.
Um, That's actually where I use her most. I've tried using her in Hydra, and I will admit in Hydra, she's quite a bit squishy, which was a little bit harder to make it work. But on the Chimera, I am loving Gwendolyn in my Chimera team. Um, you know, the a lot of things that I love about her: decreased speed on the A2, leech as well. Decrease accuracy is nice, but I don't think you're ever really going to decrease the accuracy on the boss enough to make them miss. Um, but two other things that I think are slept on a little bit: stealing of block debuffs. Now, for my team, and again, this is like a personal reason why I really like her. I use Duchess in protection, but the block debuffs isn't always protected. And the Viper form, if they steal that block
Yep.
debuffs, that could end a run entirely if you can't lock him out, right? So what I love about Gwendolyn is that, oh, he stole block debuffs. Let me just go ahead and take that right back. um, just because of the way that A3 works. And the A2 gives me a lot of flexibility because she will extend a lot of the buffs that I don't want to reapply. So I want to keep my cooldowns and say, okay, well, that debuff is applied. Now I'm going to do the damage dealing ability instead of reapplying these debuffs. And she'll extend them to 10, 11, stacks sometimes within 5 turns of a rotation on that boss. I really, really like her, and I could see her being a lot of value in many different areas of the game as well. early game clan boss, bringing that leech would be really, really effective. Even in that case, you might get some value out of the decrease accuracy, especially the increase accuracy on the A3, and then that buff extension to or debuff
Mhm.
extension. So love this champion. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to play with her or not.
I have not had a chance to actually play with one much. I've done enough takeovers where I've suggested her in general use. She's a champion I tend to skip over a little bit because I've actually never had her, but it's not
Yeah.
because I've ever thought she was bad. And in fact, one of the things I think that works really well because she's got this passive where basically every time she uses 3 skills, she gets an extra turn, so she gets back to her skills very well. She's a very, very good candidate for a provoke set on Hydra, which is actually one of the rest of the things I tend to recommend for if you can find somebody in provoke set, you don't necessarily always need a dedicated provoker. And the fact that she basically always is doing an AoE because you do 1 skill, 2 skill, A1, and then go back to one of the other skills again is pretty darn powerful. Yeah, she's a little squishy. It's you're gonna have to live with that with some of your damage dealers. She does have the passive that gives her extra damage as well, which is kind of nice. So maybe you want to build her for pure damage dealing as well. But I think building her on the provoke instead of just for savage or lethal, for example, you'll get good damage out of her with not great damage, but you get so much utility. You can bring other damage dealers rather than another support champion elsewise. I think that's a great call out.
I've tried a few different builds on her. I've tried like lethal builds, ignore defense type builds. Tried to get the most damage out of her. What I would say is I would put her in that bracket of champions that does better damage than your average debuffer, right? Like, so
Hmm.
she's a debuffer, but can also hit. Um, I I on my account wasn't able to achieve the higher levels of damage without sacrificing too much accuracy and speed, but I do think that especially, if you have the gear, like really good gear to support her, you can get some really high damage out of her. But I like her as like an above average debuffer that can also nuke. So,
Yeah, and that's always the problem with champions that need so many different stats that at that point in time blessings become important again, which is something we talked about on your channel a little bit too.
mhm.
So, but yeah, good champion. I actually would love a Gwendolyn on my account to play with her because she's pretty cool. So, all right, I'm going to go back to another fusion because, and I maybe he's not a secret anymore, but I never understood why people did not like Lana Tharl. And if of course, I say this as I show you, I didn't actually do the fusion on my main account because on my main account, I didn't feel I really needed him. Which again, I underrated this guy. I had a solution. I saw him as a solo solution for Scarab King because his entire kit just works against Scarab King. He's got the max HP decrease on the A1. He's got an ally attack with the increased crit damage, which is great if you need other champions to support. He's got a huge shield that he puts on a 3-turn cooldown for 3 turns. So if you make sure that shield's a priority, he always has the shield up, and he should be able to, if he's the fastest champion, keep it up for absolutely everybody. And against bosses or when people start dying, and he inflicts more damage under that too. But the shield's irremovable once people start dying as well. So it becomes unstealable. So he basically becomes invincible against the Scarab boss at some point in time. And that's why I ended up going for him on my alt because I needed a solution. And then Fire Knight Hard came out. And I mean, I struggled to do Fire Knight Hard for a long time on my main account because I only had Fat Man as my only ally attacker. I almost built 2 Fat Men at some point in time, but I managed to find a solution using Valkyrie. And I think people underestimate how much damage he does because he actually can hit pretty hard, how big those shields are, how much protection those shields offer, and just kind of how important ally attack is, let alone an ally attack that comes with him as well. Because
Mhm.
there's enough of these ally attacks that are like, oh, it's just these other people, or it's only 4 champions will join this person or something like that. Nope, he gets absolutely everybody and joins in with it as well. And increased crit damage is great because it's going to add extra damage to the attack no matter what. So
Mhm.
fun champion. I regret not going for him on my main. Although I think part of the reason I didn't go for him is I think I was traveling at the time, so it was like a big struggle to get him on my alt. But it was like, this is important. I need him on my alt, and I was
Mhm.
kind of forcing the issue there. So
Yeah, I've never had him, but
Mm.
I've seen the value in him 100%. And I know that he's coming up a lot more in conversation these days too. Ally attacks, there are a fair number of them these days, but like you said, not ones where it's that all of them, including him, does the attack, right?
Mhm.
Um, and as somebody that has had many different accounts, when you don't have those ally attackers, especially for Fire Knight Hard, it adds up very,
Mhm.
very quickly. Um, so yeah, I completely agree. Underrated champion for sure.
Yeah, that shield too is actually one of the things for the Fire Knight Hard. One of the difficulties of Fire Knight Hard is staying alive to get to the boss in the first place. And the fact that he's got an AoE shield that he can effectively keep up for 3 turns
Mhm.
means that you can take a lot of that damage on his shield, and you don't actually need the shield for the boss either. So you can kind of shut that off afterwards as well. So it's all kinds of extra stuff. So he's great for progression, great for endgame. So, all right, let's hear your number 3. I think, right?
Yes. So my number 3 is gonna be Molly.
Molly.
I think that she doesn't get enough credit. And we talked about provokers quite a bit earlier. But for me, Molly, I think, is one of the top, in my opinion, provokers for the Hydra, honestly. Mainly because of the passive. I do know that I've never been able to build her to hit that hard, unfortunately, but I do know that the um A1 can hit really hard, and or at least I've heard that. And then the thing that I always forget that she has is a revive. I think of her as a provoker and a hitter. That revive comes in so clutch sometimes. It's like you get a little unlucky, reflect damage up on one of the heads, and you blow yourself up, and you're like, oh man, I got to start this whole run over. And then it's like, wait, no, I have Molly, I can revive, and you're right back in the fight, and you can save yourself 20 more minutes. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, I think that especially with Archer Queen when she came out, that is a better provoker and Hex all in the same group, right? So I understand where she had maybe a bit of a fall off, but not a lot of people have Archer Queen and are not going to be able to get her again. Um, so Molly, I think a lot of people tend to sleep on Molly. I've done takeovers and seen her sitting on a roster, not getting, yeah, people don't do the token trader as
Yep.
well on her. So I think she's a great champion. I would love to have her on my free to play. I have her on my main account, and she does make it in still, even though I have 2 Archer Queens on the main account. Um, she still makes it into that third team for sure every time. So
Yeah, and I think that people underestimate how nuts this extra turn meter fill when she's hit is. This is actually, as much as that provoke is great, she would probably find uses in Hydra without that provoke with this skill still being available. This is absolutely nuts, and you can actually combine it with like an Ustrid, because then she gets extra healing with this turn meter buff as well. So you get the turn meter, and then you get the passive healing from Osted as you're getting hit, which is again keeps you alive, so you don't have to worry about the revive quite as much. And yes, it is very nice to have a oh, somebody died, I want to restart this run. Oh wait, I've got the revive, we're good to go. And Molly's is so much more reliable than a lot of other champions that you might use as a provoker and a reviver. Like an Uko in Provoke Gear, for example, is one of the ones I'll use a couple times. He works well enough because he lands it particularly reliably, and he's got a revive, but because he triggers his revive always, that revive isn't always up until 4 or 5 turns later, whereas Molly's is almost always up unless you're dying often enough where she needs to use it too often, which is then a different problem. So, very, very good champion. I love Molly. I do think that she gets kind of overlooked in the sea of revivers and provokers. And it's kind of nice to have your provoke do something other than just provoke, which is why she's really nice.
mhm, absolutely.
All right. Speaking of people you can use as a provoker, one of the ones I think actually is unfortunately criminally underrated is Deliana. And I think she's criminally underrated because they gave her away for free. She was the third free login champion that you could get, and she was better than Alexander, who you hear people talking about getting Ninja. No one ever wants to get Alexander again. Alexander was just unfortunate, unfortunately. But Deliana has a fairly unique kit with the all well, it's not all AoEs. Her A2 is not an AoE, but honestly, decreased resistance is a buff that, while decent, if you don't need it, you can turn this off, throw her in provoke gear. If you book her, this is a 4-turn cooldown block buffs. Great for progression, great for just bringing block buffs, but it's also some extra healing. It's also extra turn meter. Good stuff there. And then she's got an A1 leech that she can get up, which means you're healing on all kinds of other things. You can build her for damage, actually. She does decent amount of damage for an HP champion, and a lot of it's mostly just because she's doing AoE damage constantly. And she's actually super easy to build because if you build her with enough HP, you don't need any accuracy, or you don't need a lot of accuracy. If you can build her with 80k HP, that's 400 accuracy. You actually don't need to give her any accuracy for Hydra at that point in time. And then she throws a strengthen out when people drop low as well, keeps everyone alive. I think that's very underrated. You've got the ally HP in all battles aura, which means she's usable in anywhere. She can be a campaign farmer if you pull her early. You can put her in a stun set. A lot of it's just because she's an AoE champion. But as far as a full auto somebody in provoke gear, Deliana, I think, is criminally underrated for Hydra, as a provoker as well as a reasonable block bust champion, particularly on a lower level team where, because you can build her fast enough, you can almost always have block buffs up regardless.
Yeah, I am in the camp that slept on her for far too long. So I started playing when she was the login champ. My main account, she was the first legendary that I ever got from the login legendary, and I never 6-starred her until very, very recently, like before I moved, so a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what it was. It wasn't. I think she got a lot of hate when she came out, and when I remember Googling, like, should I don't know who this champion is, a brand new player, should I 6-star this? And it was like, probably not, not worth the books, or all these different arguments for against her. But she would have been so good for my account.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Leech on the A1, you mentioned a lot of it already, but Leech on the A1, the healing that she does on the is it the A3, that actually, like, I did use her, but as a 50, and she was still doing damage in arena for me.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I didn't know better to kind of go against the status quo, and I just followed YouTube videos at that point in time. But I completely agree that I think she's a great champion if you need a block buffs for Hydra. You mentioned it, provoke set. I use her in a stun set in Faction Wars, which proves really useful for me. Pair her up with Lunatharl in Faction Wars, and there you go. You're going to get a lot of those stuns. So yeah, I completely agree. Very underrated champion.
Yeah, I mean, even the decreased resistance isn't the worst debuff in the world, because, especially for progression early on, and to be fair, that's a little bit what we're talking about here. I don't use her much anymore on my main account. I still actually, I think I use her in Hydra on my alt, and she actually does a surprising amount of damage. I've got her built with the crit rate, gloves, and just a bunch of HP. I didn't max out the damage because I was mostly looking for the HP. But I can't tell you how many times I've done a Hydra takeover, and it's like, well, I've only got one Ugo, and I don't have any other block debuff challenge. Well, you got Deliana? Yeah, well, that's fine. Even if you don't book her, she's better than nothing unbooked. And once she's booked, she's really, really good.
Absolutely.
All right, number 4 for you.
All right, so this is my favorite one that I think, and I'm gonna be real with you, I almost don't want to put it on the list because I don't want people to know how underrated he is, because he is carrying me in live arena, tag team, siege, everywhere. It is Bolent Freewalker.
Ooh. Yeah, his name has come up in other videos I've been watching lately, and some people are suddenly onto him. And I think what had happened, and just looking at this here, I think what happened with him is, yeah, he came right after Teox, and
Yep.
Teox is totally perfectly rated as one of the best faction unity champions in the game. But after that, it was very much like, he's not better than Teox. I don't want him. I think it's where a lot of people kind of showed up for it, and
And
it's very unfortunate.
I think a lot of people also compared him to Armand's. And look, I I think he's better than Armand. I'll say it. I'm sure that I know that there are people that are going to disagree with me there, but so if we look at the A3, um, it's a 2 times hitter. Each hit has 100% chance of placing a stun. So what happens with Armand's, right? You go to use it and you weak hit somebody that's the wrong affinity. Well, if that happens to him, to Bolent, he gets another try. And then the second hit, I can't, it happens all the time. The first hit's a weak hit, second hit, boom, they're stunned. And I get what I want. But if you look at the faction unity portion of it, he ignores resistance and it has a strip as well. A
Mhm.
little dangerous when it comes to polymorph. I will admit that. And I think that was a big concern about his kit. But at my level, I'm not facing a whole team of polymorphs, honestly. And we do have ways to kind of work around that these days too. With gear and other means. So um and of course it also fills his turn meter. So he will, especially with how fast I have mine built, he will get a second turn after this ability, just like Armand's does. Then that rolls into the A2, which is a AoE decreased defense. It's a double hitter of sorts. So he'll hit one and then hit everyone else and place that decreased defense. But if you go to the passive, you'll see that whenever he hits an enemy, whenever any Skinwalker hits an enemy, they have a 10% chance to stun. I get stuns off as A1. I get stuns off as A2. I'm just stun after stun after stun. Uh, Critical hits fill turn meter, so I'm constantly filling turn meter as well. And then you'll see that my team will get ignored defense if they're under stun, which he's constantly placing. And like, just to put it in perspective, the team I run is Bolent, Mezamel now, it used to be Sun Wukong, uh, Nishak, and Basher. So every single one of them has a 10% chance to stun when they use their ability, or I think it's a hit, right? That alone is huge. So you're talking A1s from Nishak landing stuns. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like his kit is insane. And then, oh, by the way, he also has a heal on the A1 and a chance of an extra turn. So,
Yeah, and just looking at the multi hitters on there, you've got, of course, Marius here, the triple hit max HP champion that is amazing in arena. Once you get him, he will pair really well with Bolent. Nishak technically has a triple hitter on his A1, even if they're random. You've got Gwendolyn, who's got extra attacks on that A1. Uko's got a double hitter A2. Razovarg has some multi hitters as well. I mean, heck, Brachus, not that I would probably drag him into this stuff. Brachus has got that 6 hitter. That would be absolutely insane.
yep.
Mesamel's got multiple hitters. I mean, heck, I think actually Basher's got some multi hitters. Kentum's got some multi hitters as well. He's got so many champions that he can deal with that extra multi hit damage stuff that are in this faction alone, that he's very good outside of arena. But yeah, in arena, that skill set, and to be fair, I was just watching a video where I think it was Drock and Ash were actually talking about how good he is, and I didn't even realize then when they're talking about him, I was like, oh yeah, he sounds like he's better than that. And I'm reading this kit as you're talking about him again. It's like, oh no, he's even better than, yeah, he's pretty good, isn't he? It's
Yep.
he's pretty nuts.
Yeah. I mean, like this is gonna maybe hurt me if in the long run, but my live arena strategy right now is I got 4 skinwalkers and I first pick Armands, right? And I'm
Hmm.
I'm only in silver, I'm not in gold yet, but they always ban Armands. I don't have any gear on my Armands right now because he's just ban bait and I get this team in there and I'll strip off stone skin, stun them. Polymorph is really the biggest weakness for me on this team and his default speed is not bad either at 104.
Yeah.
I'm able to get him reasonably quick. He's the fastest champion on my account right now, even faster than my Arbiter. And I love this team. And then speaking of Siege, I take out the Nishak and I have the bunny. I have got Razelvarg with
Mhm.
his 20% all battles aura. So he's my lead, and I've got him in like a Slayer set, I think. So yeah, you combine them all together, and I don't think anyone has yet to beat my Skinwalker only team in Siege. And that's primarily because of Bolin. I love this guy. Just I can't say enough about him. I want him to get the respect that he deserves, but I don't want people to know how good he is, so they don't ban him in Live Arena.
Well, you're gonna have to probably put some gear on your Amons at some point in time now, but
Yeah. And I don't have Marius yet. I'm working very, very hard to get him, as he would obviously be a natural fit in that team. Sure.
oh yeah, he is an absolute beast and is totally accurately rated right now as an absolute beast.
Yes,
I
yes.
love him. So, all right, my underrated here. I'm gonna go epic this time, and we're gonna go with one of my absolute favorite epics in all of the game. I love Eurogrim. And this actually plays off of a champion I named in the other video, where we talked about champions that do these poisons. And he just brings so much to the table as an epic. I didn't have a bad L for the longest time. And in fact, I have a bad L that sits around unbuilt because by the time I got bad L, my Eurogrim was so used, and then I had multiple TOs. So yeah, I didn't really need the bad L at that point in time. But he is so strong with these two poisons and the one continuous heal, on a 4-turn cooldown. He's got a wonderful speed aura, and the speed aura is actually underrated as well. He's got 20% speed aura, which is all battles anywhere, very, very good. He's got this cleanse that's honestly the weakest part of this kit. It's a 40% and a cleanse on a 3-turn cooldown. Huge, huge heal. And then he's got this, and this is nice too. This has got a 25 bookable to 40% chance double hitter to put poisons out there. It can generally reliably place at least one additional poison, if not two. I mean, it's not going to do two reliably, but it can do one pretty easily. And between that, you get him in regeneration gear and immortal gear. He's got the continuous heals going. And I had him soloing, not necessarily soloing, but I had him, he would be my solo against the boss in my Ice Golem 25 team and my Dragon 25 team. And, he hasn't translated to the hard dungeons quite as well, but he's still so, so good. In fact, funny enough, I actually was able to run him and 4 food champions through Faction Wars 21. He's
Oh, I
that
believe it.
powerful.
Yeah, this is a great take. Absolute complete agree. I've never gotten him early enough on an account that I've been able to really benefit. Like I recently got him on the main account. I don't have him on my free to play yet, but what I really want to point out too about the speed in all battles, that 20%, that's better than a lot of legendaries.
Mm-hmm.
The only legendary that has 20% that I can think of off the top of my head, I know there are more, but we talked about the rabbit just now, and that's why, he has that 20%. That's only 1% better, but than a lot of other legendaries. And here you have an epic that has that too. And I didn't know that he had that aura until we just talked about it now. So, we're talking about the free to play challenge. I know that you're doing it. I'm doing it as well. And if we were to get a Eurogrim on our first Void Shard, we'd be set. Like he's insane.
It's in fact the power of Eurogrim. I did a takeover for somebody who said, "I'm not sure where I need to go. Coach me." And we ended up in Faction Wars because he wasn't done with his Faction Wars, despite the fact that he had an account that should have been done with Faction Wars years ago, possibly. And I looked at his account and his Ogrins, and it's like, you've got Eurogrim and he's not even built. Here's your Ogrin team. Build him. And he, hit me up yesterday, said, "Yes, I managed, your team worked. I managed to get through Ogrin 21. It's like, that's awesome. And I said, how did Eurogrim do? And he says, "Oh, Eurogrim kept dying because I only had him at level 40, and he still was like the MVP."
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Okay. But yeah, he is an absolute beast of a champion, and Yeah, you put him in nice solo gear. He's great for solo gear. The other thing he's actually really good with, amusingly, because he's throwing these continuous heals out there. I actually used him on speed runs with Seer. So I actually had him for extra buffs with Seer. So he'd pull the continuous heals out and put the speed aura out and the poisons, and then Seer would wipe the wave, and then I'd reset it, and we'd go again, and then I'd reset it, and we'd go again, and then we'd get at the boss. So, you know, so good, so good.
No, this kit looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully we pull him in the next couple weeks, right?
Oh yeah, I mean even on your end game account, he's worth building just for the uses he'll have in Centranos, because that aura is great, the healing is great, the poisons are great, and if he ends up just being the guy that I need, I need a speed aura to make this team just a little bit faster, and I need an extra buff for my seer to just clear, boom, he's in.
I will keep that in mind. I've been a little lazy on that, but I'm picking it up now.
All right, your last one. Got something spicy?
This one is a lot less spicy. I'm torn between three underrated champions.
Give me a quick let's give me the two that you're not going to go with, and then we can talk about the one you're going to go with. We'll do it. It's not an R8 video if you're not doing an honorable mention.
I've got Godseeker. The Godseeker is not who I'm going with, but I do think that she gets underrated. A lot of people look at her as just a sand devil, right? On my free to play, she is my best and only reviver other than like Arbiter. So, I think that she's there. I'm mostly torn between Vargal, who just got a buff, and Lady of Ireth. And I'm going to pivot because Vargal just got the buff, and I think a lot of people are talking about him more than they did. We're going to pivot to Lady of Ireth or Ireth.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really like this champion. Now, on my main account, I have yet to pull keep wanting to say Tyrant, but not Kymar. I have yet to pull Kymar. I've never really had any cooldown reduction on that account other than the rares, right? Lady, when they reworked Lady of Ireth, and by the way, she was atrocious before.
By the way, don't look.
Oh God, yeah. Kymar was my most wanted until the day that they buffed and reworked Lady of Ireth. Now I no longer chase Kymars because between her and Emic, I actually have a lot of teams that use Lady of Ireth and Emic. Their two cooldown reductions together kind of create one Kymar. But they bring a lot more to the table. You have the strength and the continuous heal. So the A2, if the target ally is not fully healed, places block damage buff on them for 2 turns. If they're fully healed, gives them 50% turn meter. That I actually used that a lot with Lady of Ireth, Emic, and Trunda before the nerf. That was a team, and I was constantly feeding Trunda turn meter. And also that's a cleanse as well. It's a single target. Like I can see where there are some flaws in the kit a little bit, but for me, I think that I remember she was part of the Arbiter show, the Call of the Arbiter show that they did on YouTube. And when I pulled her during that event, I thought, because I didn't have a lot of Sylvan Watchers at the time, that she was really going to be my support. And she did not live up to that. But since that rework with that cooldown reduction and Emic, which was a fusion that I think a lot of people did, right? It was a void fusion and it had a lot of hype around it. You combine the two of them, and I mean, that is my Doom Tower team, right? You think about Kymar resetting Seer, but you need to bring buffs. Well, just imagine bringing your resetters and they bring the buffs that you're using Seer with. And so that has become my Doom Tower team for the waves. And I really, really like her. And I don't think that she gets enough love as a champion for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of the hate does stem from the fact that before she didn't, this was a new addition to the kit. I don't remember what else they changed, But just adding this turned her from a meh champ to a, oh my gosh, this is amazing champ. But I think they also dropped the cooldown on this by one, maybe. And I think this heal didn't do the surplus heal thing that it now does.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was, there were several things that they added to her kit that made a kit that was like, I don't know where I would ever want to use her unless I'm desperate or it's the only healer I've got, to this is a viable healer. I mean, I actually see her, she would actually be a good partner with like Senna in Chimera if anyone ever had a Senna, because you get extra continuous heals and you reduce the cooldowns by one, which means you can get more continuous heals out and do other triggering as well. And then she gets the
Mhm.
extra turn meter. And since this can do turn meter fill on people that are healed, and if there's enough continuous heals out there, they're going to be healed. This can be huge as well. All kinds of fun uses for her. I believe I've got one on this account. Yeah, I do have one on this account. And I have not built her. And to be fair, I didn't build her when I got her because she was terrible. And I haven't built her since because, well, as you saw, I have my army of Kymars.
Yeah,
And
I was gonna
but it just I didn't need that particular skill set, but it's not because she wasn't good. It's just because I haven't needed that skill set anymore because yes, she's very good. She's not necessarily S tier in any specific spot, so I just have had better champions in other spots since then. But great champion, and to be fair, if I ever needed this cooldown, strengthen, continuous heal, I'd build her. I'd build her in a heartbeat. I don't think she's a bad build. I just, at the moment, I've got to put my resources elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I get it. It's not gonna fill that niche for everybody, but if
Mm-hmm.
you're looking for a 3-turn reduced cooldown by 1 turn uh champion, a lot of people are gonna look at a rare. Well, here, if you happen to have her sitting in your vault, she can not only do that, but also bring more to the table, right? And so I just think that it's for me personally, when they buffed her,
Mm-hmm.
because I actually had already 6-starred her because I thought
Yeah.
that, oh, legendary, throw her in faction wars, and then I was like, no, this isn't working at all. Um, but I took her out of the vault, built her, put her with Emic, and you know, one of the things I love about Raid Shadow Legends is I don't chase it that often, but building those teams that you come up with on your own.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, you have an idea. What if I take this guy and that guy and I put them together? What happens? And that's what I did with Lady of Aerith and Emic, and I'm very proud of it, as I'm sure you can tell. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just one of those things that I just have to give her a shout out. She's
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say she's my Syl. So
Well, speaking of Syl, maybe a hot take, maybe not. I don't know. Especially given some of the stuff we talked about in that other video that you guys should definitely watch that we keep alluding to. Syl is actually my number 5 on my underrated. And you had a couple points where you talked about how currently the game is sped up quite a bit, where it's easier to get further on in the game where you don't necessarily need Syl. But I think part of the reason that I think that Syl is underrated is I think Syl continues to find uses in the game in places where people don't necessarily expect to use her, or have come to the point of where, oh, I've had Syl, I don't, or worse yet, they haven't rebuilt their Syl in ages, so they bring her into some content and she gets mauled because she's absolutely atrocious, and it's like, rebuild her. You need to rebuild your champions at some point. But what I think she doesn't get a lot of credit for, first of all, obviously, you've got this one here, which is the nice stun. This is what she's kind of known for. This does decent damage if you want to build her for damage. I don't like building her for damage. I like the Relentless build her with high accuracy, in Relentless, fast as possible, a mix of HP and defense, because yes, she's a defense-based champion, but you want her to stay alive, and HP plus defense combined is why you keep champions alive in PvE. She's got the revive, which is a good emergency revive. So if you need a reviver in some content, that's good. This passive heal continues to be one of the best heals in the game, in my opinion. And I love champions like her or Elva or Sify. And obviously, Elva is accessible, kind of, but obviously a legendary still, you need to pull her. Sify is a void legendary. Very few people are going to have her necessarily. Syl brings it all, and because Syl does it on her turn, she does it better than those two do with that passive heal. So in places where you need that healing, she is absolutely clutch. Specifically, Amius. She is so clutch in Amius because you have so much damage you're taking, depending on your team, if you're not speed running it somehow. She adds that extra healing. She gets those extra turns. She needs the accuracy anyway, so you could certainly put Brimstone on her, and if she can land Brimstone against the boss, that's great. The other place I love to use her that I think she is very underrated for is she is an amazing Fire Knight champion. And I don't think a lot of people realize that on her A1, she has a decreased speed and a decreased turn meter. And on the normal Fire Knight, especially on Fire Knight 25, having her land your decreased speed is great. I suddenly don't need another decreased speed champion. You can actually prioritize her to lead off with this once and then never use it again. And if she has it off of cooldown, she gets a double hit to help you get through the shield. And if she doesn't, she doesn't. It's not, it's a, oh well type
Yeah.
thing. You get the extra healing if you're struggling with the boss hitting your shield down and you can't keep it down. But the decreased speed and the turn meter control, it's just that extra little oomph. And because she is taking extra turns anyway, because you're building her relentless, sometimes she will take 2, 3, 4 attacks in a row. And if she's nailing down the shield, that's extra hits on the shield. If she's already through the shield, that's extra turn meter and better chances of placing that decreased speed. And I'm not saying that she's an end game Fire Knight 25 champion, but she is a very good. I just got to Fire Knight 25. I'm at 180 days, or I'm even 207 days in. And I say this as a person who I went a year and a half without pulling an allure in my account.
Yo, yeah, yeah,
So I was speed running with Holes Ring because I had a Holes Ring built at ridiculous speeds. And this, I had them at like 285 speed and, 200 crit damage, full crit rates, enough accuracy to land everything back before we had blessings and, ascensions and all that other stuff. It was an absolute ridiculous build. I could barely get it to work, but I got him fast enough to be able to do speed running with it. Before then, it was Syl and Vizix and Coldheart.
yeah,
And those were my
yeah,
three turn meter controls. And overall, I think for progression, but even not beyond progression, for Doom Tower waves, I still have people that are like, I can't get past, floors 115 to 120. I can't do my full auto team. Well, bring Syl in, because that brings me the healing that I might need to keep everyone alive, gives me the revive in case I lose control, and a 3-turn AoE stun that has a decent chance of landing because it's a double hitter. That is still super valuable. Centranos, again, super valuable. Oh, darn, I've got a champion with stun, revives, and healing. You're not going to turn that down. There's
yeah.
just so many places that I think Syl is very, very good. She falls off at the stage of the game where you can outdamage your opponent so badly that you don't need any healing of any kind, or you don't even need the control. But until you're at those two spots, she just brings so much to the table as a free champion that you're guaranteed to get. And again, I use on an endgame account. I've made an Amius video beating Amius hard on every stage of all the rotations we've had, and I've used Syl in at least 2 of them. She's just that good.
I will say that, so in case it's not clear, we
Yeah.
disagree here. She was on my list of overrated
Mhm.
champions, but I will say that you're you are quite convincing, and I'm very much contemplating building her on um both my main and my free to play. Oh no, she's 60 on my main, but on my free to play, she's still 50. What's gonna make you laugh too is that early on my free to play account, I actually pulled the 5-star soul for her, and I still never leveled or built her. I might be a little biased here, but my counter arguments that why I'm not the biggest Syl fan is a lot to do with when you get her and how quickly the game moves now. And I agree with you. That stun is good, but then you compare it to Armand's, right? Or what's the tiger one?
Oh yeah.
Magash. You know, like I'm not, and of course she's free, right? So she's
Hmm.
not going to be this as crazy overpowered as some of the ones that we just mentioned, or that I just mentioned. But there, there's definitely been a bit of a fall off in that. Now we said this on my video too. If you don't have those champions, she will absolutely 100% fill that void. I think that she is in, I think I said this, that she's good but not great. And I think a lot of people put her maybe just a little bit higher than I would. I think she's valuable. I don't hate her. I don't think she's terrible. I just think that she may be too highly valued than I personally would put her at. So, oh, plus, yeah, you're pulling up Mikage right there, who has an AoE stun as well.
Yeah, it's just, but a lot of it too is just, to be fair, I haven't revised her too much either, but she's got okay accuracy, not enough to land stuff on Amius, but she's got good speed, decent amount of everything else here, does okay damage, and this build works on hard Amius. I've had no problems with her on hard Amius. Again, I used a very similar build when I was doing Fire Knight for a while. Again, she full, it's one of the champions I will. Oh, I've got Syl available. Yeah, let's throw her into the team as just the fifth option on some stuff too. It's one of these things where, yeah, I guess you don't necessarily need her in every location, but fitting her in gives you a much better chance of success than a lot of other, oh, here's the fifth champion here, or oh, the fifth champion there.
Mhm.
And from a progression standpoint, she is so powerful because she's actually really useful on any place where you're struggling on wave clear to keep people alive or to control the
Mhm.
waves, because she does both at the same time. And that's really, I think, where her value comes in, is that control plus revive plus healing is 3 roles on a team. I
Yeah.
mean, and I know I've got some flack from this before from people that are later game. She's actually viable in Hydra because she does have an AoE damage dealing ability. It's not great, but sometimes if
Mhm.
you're doing normal, well, hey, I at least had a chance to hit all 4 of those heads a little bit, so that's something. The healing is always a problem. The revives are super helpful. She's not, definitely not end game, definitely not great for that, but the decreased speed even can be useful in Hydra. So,
I could
on
see
your
it.
third team because you're struggling for something, you throw in a Hydra team.
I could see an argument even for Chimera. You
Hmm.
don't, you're gonna need a reviver, right? If you don't have one, or if you only have Syl, I mean, she's great, and then she brings that decreased speed on the A1 to slow the boss. I do see the value.
Hmm.
Absolutely, I do. I would love, and we talked about this before as well, but I would love to see her just give her to players a little bit earlier. 180 days. That's a long time. Now, for your average player, guy playing on the phone, probably, I, no offense to people that play on mobile,
Yeah.
but people that play it much more casually than myself and you. Um, by the time that I got her on, by the time I got her on the free to play, even with that 5-star blessing, I had a fully built, like 4-star blessing Godseek, right? That yes, I had to get lucky enough. You mentioned it. Sometimes you
Hmm.
may not get a lure for 3 years,
Yeah.
like stuff happens, right? If she can perform, if you need those roles filled, Syl is a great but personally, in my experiences, I never needed those roles filled, unfortunately. So maybe that's why I'm, a little uh not a fan as much as others, but I
Yeah.
see the
And
value.
yeah, and I think, I mean, it really is, that's kind of where, we can end this too, is I think a lot of this over and underrated sometimes is, where have you used these champions and what they meant to you in your account. You're always going to rate those champions a little bit higher. And sometimes, this champion isn't good, but I like this champion because of this. Rorik is a great example. I know Rorik sucks, but I like Rorik because he brought me through a lot of stuff really, really early on because it was the only choice I had. And there's champions like that. And meanwhile, there's also a little bit of this, counterculture level of, everyone says this champion is great, I'm going to try to do it without them, or sometimes it's a matter of just that champion is old, or Login champions are actually a really good example of that. Some login champions are absolutely horrible, but a lot of people are used to the login champions not being good. And you've got your High Katoon, very, very good when you get
Mhm.
her.
Yep.
Honestly, regardless of whether or not you have an apothecary or any other speed champion, she's a champion you will probably use at some level for a long time in your account until you get enough speed champions that you can finally retire her. You've got, you know, Dark Elhane is one of these champions that's both disappointing and good at the same time, depending on what you need out of the champion. You've got, Dark Aethel, on the other hand, not particularly good at all. You've got Yaga, absolutely horrible. And Sill's definitely one of these champions where you may not need her when you get her, but that doesn't mean that she won't help your account in little itty bitty ways that you may not be thinking of, which is, kind of where I think she falls. And I think she's just good enough that it's nice to have her built, because if you need that set of skills, she's there and she's pretty flexible. So
Well,
it
you've
has been a blast talking with you, other dude. This has been a long time coming. It's been a lot of fun. Definitely appreciate that, guys. Go check out the video we're doing on Roadblock's channel, or already did. We'll put a link to that down below as well. He also streams. You stream on Twitch and on YouTube as well, I believe. Correct?
Yes, yes.
So I'll try to bring links to all that fun stuff as well. Obviously, I stream on Twitch. I make videos on YouTube. If you're watching this, I mean, I don't know where else you'd be watching this. And so I appreciate you guys. What are your champions that you think are underrated? Anything you disagree with that we've talked about, or anything you agree with? Let us know in the comments. I'd love to hear it. It's always kind of cool to hear your stories about champions that you think are too good, too bad, or that we don't know what we're talking about with. Go ahead, let us know. Definitely appreciate it. Maybe you'll open our eyes. And hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that over on his channel as well. And appreciate you guys. All take care. And until the next video, I'm Bront CatHerder.